Grab a seat, grab a seat, grab a seat.
You're on Facebook?
Welcome everybody. Welcome to the last missions meeting of 2016. Alright, today I want to go over what we're going to be doing in 2017 for missions, because we are expanding our missionary capacity and what we're going to be trying to do. So this is for everyone who's watching remotely. I am David Pat. I work for OMF International, but I am also the president of Renewal Missions, and I'll explain how that all works. So let's start with my first role. My first role is at OMF International. Steve Weems is my supervisor, the white guy in the back. Okay. he was a missionary to Japan for like 20-something years, and who we are as OMF is we reach the unreached in East Asia. So basically, populations and people groups that are not being served in East Asia. That's our main mission. But as part of the U.S. home side, what my job is to mobilize churches, is to get other people involved in the work of missions. Which brings me to why I did Renewal Missions. I started Renewal Missions because there are things I wanted to do in China that I did not want people in OMF to get arrested for. And so I formed my own nonprofit, Renewal Missions. And also because there were side projects that I wanted to do that would not fall under OMF. So some of that stuff is here. The Gospel of John, some of you guys know this, is a comic book. Right, it's a comic book, 8-bit presentation of the Gospel. And we also have the Gospel of Mark, and that's an app for both Android and iOS. We gotta get that back in the iOS store someday. So we have both physical and digital copies of the Gospel, and we also have renewal cards under Renewal Missions. Right, I wanted the term renewals that can be a lot of things. So this is renewal cards, and what this is we basically taught orphans and disabled in China how to make these. So these are all handmade to give them employment, and so we can provide them mentorship. Because as long as you guys know, you can't just give people food and money and housing, because that doesn't fix any of the problems in their community. Right? If you want to fix problems among the disabled populations, among the poor, among the orphans, you have to make structural changes. And so I'm gonna talk about that real quick. So what we want to do as Renewal Missions and why you guys are here. Here's what we're fighting with. 153 million orphans worldwide. 1 in 14 children are known orphans in the world. We wanted to focus at Renewal Missions on a population that's unreached, right? That's underserved. Right? At OMF, that's what we talk about, unreached. Because the reality is, for every $100 you give to like evangelism, charity, stuff like that, only 50 cents of it goes to missions work. What that means is this: only 50 cents of every $100 you give actually goes to the hardest places. All right? Now think about your friends who do charity. Think about your friends who volunteer. And this is not to downplay charities or volunteers, okay? But most of the people you know who volunteer and help and give to places that already have a lot of donors, that already have a lot of volunteers, right? So one of the things we want to do right away at Renewal is we want to like say, what are the hardest places to go and what are the most underserved communities? And so one of the things we realized right away was that's orphans. Okay, and if you think about your friends, your own circles of nonprofit stuff, there are not a lot of groups that work with orphans. Okay, but it's one of the biggest. 1 in 14 children worldwide are orphans. Checking this off my phone. Focus this. If you guys can't see that I'm trying to make it that. Okay. 1 billion people in the world have a disability. Okay, I'm just going to read you off what this says. Disabilities are actually really common. Okay, to make this personal for you guys, think about just your circle, your family, your community. How many people do you know who have a physical disability that's visible? So for example, like an arm or a leg that's somehow challenged, who have a visual impairment of some kind, right? Who have a speech impediment of some kind, or a mental handicap of some kind. The reason why disabilities are big issues, okay? Because even here in America, where we're progressive and stuff like that, and places that are progressive, having a disability makes you an outcast, right? I think everyone here is older than a high schooler, okay? You know, if you have anything that makes you different, it makes you an outcast. And a lot of disabilities, all right, make you an outcast. it makes you not be able to be part of the regular community. So as a Christian missionary, this is one of the things we realized. Those who are disabled, all right, are to themselves a people group. Okay? And you know this because if you go to church, how many people in your church have disability? Have a visible, obvious disability, right? And is that representative of the larger population? I guarantee that's not. I guarantee that's not. Our churches do not reflect the larger community in the US and world, especially worldwide, right? And it's because those with disabilities, those who are different than us, don't feel comfortable at our churches, don't feel comfortable in our communities. So that's one of the things that we want to do at Renewal too. Work with orphans, those who do not have family connections, who are usually poor, and those with disabilities. And again, people with if you really think about your community, you know people with disabilities, right? And just think about your own reaction to them. It's difficult. A lot of times it's not because we're mean, but it's because we don't know what to do, right? When someone's different than us, we don't know what to do. So that's one of the things we wanted to focus on at Renewal Missions. Our mission started out originally just in Shanghai, and then we started expanding it to other places. So this is Jiangsu in Shanghai. When we first started, when I first started bringing teams, one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to use all the gift sets that you guys have. Okay, so John Sui, you guys know he's a bodybuilder. He's also a trained chef. Okay, the mission of Renewal is to create, develop, and implement new strategies for missions and evangelization. So here's what that means. You guys see what that means here, right? My background is in media production, all right, and business. So that's why we created comic books. We created a business. John's thing is a trained chef. So what we did in Shanghai is we had John teach the girls how to cook healthy. All right, and John doesn't have Chinese, so cooking is something you can teach without language skills. All right, but that's one of the things we wanted to do, is that part of what Renewal is, because I'm not trying to compete with OMF. All right, the whole point of Renewal, when we started it, was to use as a mobilization tool, is to be an example, right? Is to have a chance for you to be in an environment where your gifts can be built up. All right, I'm gonna say that again. Renewal Missions, the whole point of it is to put you in an environment where we can build up your gifts. Because in Renewal Missions, because I'm the founder, it's an extension of myself, right? Because I can only reproduce who I am. When I started Renewal Missions, I saw it as an extension of my personal training. I saw it as an extension of my mentorship. I saw it as an extension of my mobilization. All right? It's to put you in a challenging place, in a challenging environment, and to give you the opportunity to grow. All right? So those of you guys who trained with me, all right? I'm gonna push you to grow. All right? You're never buff enough. You're never lean enough. You don't speak well enough. You don't serve good enough. All right? But we're gonna give you an opportunity to grow. That's what we started with in Shanghai. Okay, and now John's been on a couple trips with us now to do mission stuff, and he's growing himself. John's actually starting seminary in February, all right, at Bethel Seminary. To me, that's a success. I can't control the rest of his career, all right, I'm not trying to, all right. All we're trying to do here is to jumpstart it. We're trying to jumpstart your ability to serve. We're trying to jumpstart your ability to use your gifts to serve others, especially those who are underserved, especially those that no one else is serving. That's what unreached means. That's what underserved means. This is Connie. I'll just tell you the story about Connie real quick, for those who haven't seen her, or seen her story. Connie illustrates what we're trying to do at Renewal. When I first went to the orphanage, it was like 8-9 years ago now, something like that. We went to the orphanage, and my Mandarin wasn't good when I first went to China. Okay, and so we went to the orphanage, and we were hanging out with the girls, and I was like, what can I do to kind of just serve and have fun with the girls? So in the morning, I'm like, hey girls, let's go for a jog. And the girls were like, yeah, let's go for a jog. And then even my own team, most of them were not really good athletes and stuff, right? So we go for a jog, and I think it was like me and Phil Chang. Some of you guys remember Phil Chang. We were running fast, probably like an 8-9 minute mile pace, okay? And then we go out, and most of the girls like fell back to like walking speed, and that's cool. You never ran before. One of the girls, Connie, right? Because I wasn't aware I'm running fast. She was running with us. And she was like talking to us the whole time, all right? And I'm like, I'm at like an 8-9 minute mile pace, right? Well, so you can tell you that's a pretty fast pace, all right? And I was like, wait, Connie, you never ran before? She's like, no, it's my first time running, right? Like in a serious, like, at a cadence. I was like, all right. So I pushed the pace to 7-minute pace, and she kept up with me. We did 3 miles. We did 3 miles at a 7-minute pace, right? And I'm like, Connie, you've never ran before. I was like, no, I've never been coached. I've never done this before, like seriously. I was like, This is not common. Okay, for a girl to run at a 7-mile pace who's never trained in her life, it's not common. Her disability is, you can kind of see it a little bit, it's faint. Her right arm is not fully developed. It only goes to her elbow. Okay, so on her right arm, basically she only has like one finger coming out of her elbow on her right arm. Okay, so she was abandoned at birth, as most of these girls are. She never knew her parents. All right, and she was probably abandoned because her parents probably thought that her physical disability is so debilitating. She could never really do much physically. When I was working with her, right, the next couple of days I started training her. Right, I started training her, and the one thing I just wanted her to know, I believe in your physical ability. That's one of the things I wanted to tell her right off the bat. Okay, because her whole life, even her parents abandoned her at birth because of her physical disability. Right? She grew up in a government orphanage system where people looked down on her because of her physical ability and what she was capable of. I was only going to be there for like a week or two. So the one thing I wanted to get across to her is, I believe in your physical ability. Right? I'm telling her, look, as a bodybuilder, all right, who does this for a living, who's a professional at this, I believe in what you can do physically. I want you to believe in yourself like I believe in you. Because as a Christian, here's what that means. It means God did not make a mistake when Connie was born. But that's the way she was treated her entire life. If you're treated a certain way, you start to believe certain things about yourself. Okay? And that's what the gospel is. That's what the good news of Jesus Christ is. When we bring people truth, we're changing their worldview from what the world says they are to what God says they are. That's what being a missionary is. So one thing I told Connie right away, I told Connie, you know what the Bible believes about you? You know what God says about you? God believes in your physical ability, that God didn't make a mistake making you. I convey that in my bodybuilding, coaching, personal training kind of way, all right? I taught her how to pose and stuff too, okay? I still remember some of that, okay? Years and years later, she sends me pictures. She still runs today, all right? She takes the other girls running with her, okay? She's still faster than a lot of the boys. She was told from a young age that she's not physically able. But still, of course, a few days, just me telling her, hey, look, I believe in your ability. You're not bad at this. You're actually really good at this. Changed her life. Does short-term missions make a difference? Yes. If you understand the difference you can make in short-term missions. Okay? What we're trying to do with short-term trips, we're trying to stimulate, we're trying to be a catalyst, right? We're trying to start something. The teams that go back build on top of that. That's the way I want you to look at it. Okay? We're not trying to accomplish everything in one trip. What we're trying to do is we're trying to stimulate and help you understand your gifts so that over a long period of time you continue serving. That doesn't mean you have to go back every single year or be a long-term missionary. That could mean that, right? I would really encourage you to live overseas and actually do it for the long term. But it could also mean you're praying. It could also mean you're helping support and send. All right? It could also mean you're telling others to go on trips. All right? A lot of people in this room actually met you because of other people. All right? And that was mobilization. That's a huge part of what we're trying to do. What's next for us? Budapest. All right, this is a coffee shop. Okay, this is a coffee shop in Budapest. When I first went to Budapest, I'll be honest, I thought Budapest was like the Phoenix, Arizona of Europe. I was born in Phoenix, okay, so I can make fun of it. I thought it was just like a big city with like nothing there. Okay, Budapest is like the cultural capital of Eastern Europe. All right, the Hungarian Empire was actually really, really big, and so because of that, Budapest, the capital city, is actually just pretty amazing. We went to Budapest this year in 2016 for the World Championships, and one of the things I wanted to do is I just put this out there. My God, if you would open doors, we will be willing to do whatever you see is fit. Okay, and so we actually met with YWAM missionaries. YWAM is a big mission organization, mostly with young people, and they opened this coffee shop in Budapest. And their mission is actually to serve refugees and the poor in the center of the city. All right, I met this guy named Akab. Akab is from North India. All right, he has a really interesting look. He looks like Chinese Indian. It's like a really interesting look. But he actually invited us back to work with refugees in Budapest. Right, they're refugee camps. Because of where Budapest is situated, and because of the European Union rules on migration, there are a lot of refugees coming out of Syria and North Africa that go to Budapest. There are currently refugee camps there, but there's a lot of legislation right now limiting more refugees into Budapest. I'm not sure how that's all going to work out, okay? But I know this. One of the big challenges of our lifetime, right, is the refugee crisis, right? The migration crisis is a huge challenge. And with that, what does that have to do with us? Obviously orphans, right? Obviously the separation of children from their families. The news stories will talk about this, right? But if you just use common sense, okay, when you have millions of people moving across the ocean and stuff like that, do you think all families stay together? There's no way, right? There's no way. You think those with disabilities travel as well as those who are fully physically able? There's no way, okay? So so even within the population of refugees, I see a specific mission that Renewal can serve, especially with those with disabilities, especially with those who are orphans. We want to reach those groups. This is prophetic for me, okay? This is welcome home. There was a gym in Budapest. It's like a 5-story gym called Flex Gym. All right, and when I went in there, it had this on the wall. It says welcome home. I don't believe in signs because I believe everything is a sign. All right, because I believe God is sovereign, so nothing happens by accident. One of the first things that confirmed for me that Shanghai would be a mission field is that I met almost all my good ministry partners at the gym, or because of the gym in Shanghai. All right, when I went to Budapest, and then I saw that, I was like, you know what, this might be something. This was for my first trip to Budapest. On my second trip, right, what I couldn't do my first trip is I could not get into an orphanage. All right, that's one of the things I wanted to do, but I do not speak Hungarian. All right, and I tried. I Googled so hard in English, all right, and I emailed people in English, and I was like, I'm really important. Please contact me back, all right? And people were like, you're not important. All right, get out of here. No one responded to me. All right? I called them and everything. No one responded to me. All right, I was angry because I'm very important. And then the World Championships happened in Budapest, okay? And then some people knew I was a U.S. captain. A woman contacted me, right? And she says, hey, I'm trying to figure out immigration issues to come to the U.S. I'm actually the world champion sports model. All right, and I know you're the U.S. captain. I was wondering if you can help me for my. She wanted an athlete's visa to come to the U.S. All right, and I'm like, you're currently in Budapest. She's like, yeah. I'm like, I can help you with this. Right? She's like, really? She's like, yes. All right. I was like, oh my god. She's like, so thankful, right? She's like, and I was like, yeah, I'll come meet you at the gym. She's like, no, I'll come pick you up at the airport. All right. I was like, for reals? All right. I'm like, that'd be sweet. All right. See what's an Uber. And so her and her husband picked up me and Carmen at the airport in Budapest. Okay, and then for the first couple days, I was just telling her, you got to give to get. Okay, in life, I give, get. So the first couple days, I was helping her understand some of the immigration stuff that I knew of some immigrants in the U.S. because my family are immigrants, right? As a sports model, I try to help her understand what it's like from the U.S. side. After 2 days, she's like, her and her husband are really grateful for our help. She's like, how can I help you? I'm like, kind of a weird request. Can you help me find an orphanage? She's like, yes. And I'm like, can you help us find an orphanage close to the city center, right? Because I don't have a car. She's like, yes. All right. Turns out her sister actually works with those with disabilities. That's a small place. All right. She connected us with an orphanage. That's actually much bigger than the one we work with in Shanghai. And we were able to give out the first batch of Gospel of John comic books. Okay. So on the next trip, we're going to try to connect with that same orphanage. We're going to try to do more stuff. I'm going to need her help with that. Okay. So a lot of this stuff is in the brainstorming stages. It's really early on, but this is what we're hoping to do. So what we already have going on for next year is we already have the Shanghai trip lined up with Mike and Tiff in February. We already have the Budapest trip lined up in end of May. The reason you guys are all here, all right, is to hear what we're trying to do and understand that more things might come up next year. These are just the first 2 trips that we definitely have locked in place, all right? My hope to you guys is that something about these stories that I've kind of talked about today speaks to you. All right. One of the things I try to do at actually Renewal Missions is try to make just really random stuff work for missions. Okay, that's actually really meaningful to me. All right, because I hope you think Like, man, all Dave Had's good at is being buff. And all Dave Had is good at is making comic books. Good. Alright, because some of you guys have real skills. Alright, some of you guys are actually engineers and mental health therapists and things like that. Alright, good. We need to work together to make this happen. Alright? Nothing that we do on missions is ever a solo project. Everything has to be done as a team. Alright? The longer and longer I do missions, is the more and more I realize that. No one fully has a skill set for everything. And no one has a personality type to connect with everyone, and no one has all the money they need, no one has all the prayer covering they need. Alright? We have to work together as a team. Some of you guys have been with us already to Shanghai. Alright? And here's a challenge to you. Let's continue to be involved. Alright? Not just in Shanghai missions, but to be missions in general. Alright? Because the hope of what we're trying to do is for you to fully realize your gifts and to use them in the hardest places. You can call them missions, you can call it whatever you want, right? Well, here's what I see. There are needs that the church and as Christians we're supposed to do, they're not being done. Alright? That's what I see. I see there's 1 in 14 people in the world, right, are orphans. And even in your own circles, very few people work with orphans. There are tons of churches, right? And you've been at churches, and you're in a church. And we know this, the population in the US is huge with disabilities. So why don't people in our church have disabilities? Because there's underserved populations, there's unreached groups, right? There's peoples that feel outcasted by the way church is right now. That's why we need you guys to stimulate your gifts and to reach and to do something about it. God can use anyone. All right? The challenge to you is what are you going to do with all the things that you've been given? What are you going to do with your secular job? What are you going to do one day as a Christian professional? Okay? It's about using everything together to serve God. All right? What do we do now? The next trip we're mobilizing for, the closest one, is going to be Shanghai. All right? Shanghai is happening February 8 through 15. That's going to be myself, Carmen, Mike, Tiff, and then John. All right? We are continuing to work with the orphans and disabled. Our model is going to be the Gospel of John comic book. John's going to do cooking stuff. All right? And also, I'm going to try to get Carmen to do mental health counseling stuff. All right? I'm not sure what that looks like. I can tell you my brainstorming what that looks like right now. And Shanghai is kind of the test bed. All right? Shanghai is the test bed for other places because I know Shanghai the best. One of the needs that I see in communities with disabilities and the communities with orphans is understanding personal narrative. And I'm using technical terms now, all right? I'm a psychologist. But how do you view yourself, right? And a lot of these girls have never really thought about who they are, right? Think about your last names. Your last names connect you with the family, right? And then your family has a story, okay? Josh's family, they're the original, the San Diegans, all right? They're the original people from San Diego and stuff like that, okay? Carmen's family, you guys are like, you know, young professionals in Northern California coming out at such and such, such and such. You know, the girls in China from Gaoyou, their last names are all Gao. All right, all the names are Gao. Lori Gao, Connie Gao, because they don't have a family. They don't have a family. They don't have an origin story. The only thing they've ever known is growing up in an orphanage. All right, that's the only thing they've ever known. The only thing they've ever known is being in the care of the government, and they're being told they suck, and they're terrible, and that they can't do this, they can't do that. One of the things I've learned, right, through Connie and working with my personal training clients, this is not mental psychosis voodoo, right? This is really personal training. What I learned in personal training is what you believe about yourself affects how you work, right? What you believe about yourself, what you believe about your narrative affects what you become later in life. Honestly, when I first started bodybuilding, I really believed that bodybuilding was my passion, my calling early on. All right, to some detriment too. But when I was like a teenager, I went to World Gym, and this one guy introduced me to this like old like black guy who like was Mr. Universe like back in the 80s or something like that. Okay, and he looked at me. He's like, "Kid, you can win Olympia one day." It's so small of a thing, okay? But a guy who won the universe when I was a teenager looked at me, okay, and he said, "Kid, you can win the Olympia one day." My narrative changed. What I believe about myself changed. All right? Because I posted this a couple days ago on Facebook, right? My first thing I did about bodybuilding, I was so unconfident, I wouldn't even enter a show. All right? I entered pictures into bodybuilding.com because it was like no risk, all right? It was like, here are my pictures. Did I look good or not? And I won Teen Bodybuilder of the Week. That small Teen Bodybuilder of the Week on bodybuilding.com made me believe I could just compete in bodybuilding. So now I did my first show. All right, and then I kept doing stuff and stuff like that. But I thought I was like, cool, I'm a good teen bodybuilder. That was my story I told myself. But when that one old black guy at World Gym in San Diego said, "Kid, one day you can become Mr. Olympia," the way I viewed God's gifts and blessings on my life changed. Now, I'm still a Christian. I still believe God is sovereign. Okay, now I still have people who encourage me, my family who believes me, okay? All that's still true. And I still read the Bible, go to church, and people are like, yeah, I should do something for God. But the moment someone told me that, "Kid, you could be Mr. Olympia one day," what I believed about God's calling in my life changed. Because someone believed in me. Someone who was good, not just some random dude, right? Like, I say this to everybody, okay? But someone who was good believed in me. So what I thought about what God has blessed me with changed. That's what I want to do in Shanghai this time. And Carmen's gonna help me do it, because Carmen's super able. All right? And Tiff, because you have some psych background too. Okay? Personal narrative. To make it more Christianized, to make it accept it more, right? Some of you guys don't believe in that stuff. How do you know your calling? Right? Christians we talk about it all the time. We have a calling, right? We're put on this earth for some reason. How do you know what your calling is? Right? How did you discover your calling? Is it not because of the people around you? Because God works through means, right? God doesn't zap things to our brain. He does sometimes. But there's integrity in God training therapists. There's integrity in God training personal trainers. There's integrity in God training mobilizers. So God works through people. Now, I know with the orphans, they never had people in their life who believed in them and who took them on this self-discovery process. Instead, what they've had in their entire life, people putting them down. So we have an opportunity in one weekend in Shanghai to reverse 20 years of damage. And that's faith. Because with everything we do requires an element of faith, right? We're going to try to reverse 20 years of damage in one weekend. And that's why you guys are here to help us pray, all right? To get supporters, all right? To let more people join this journey, all right? Because we know this is a long process, all right? We've been doing this for years and years. This won't be the last trip. For those of you guys who are hearing it now, I need you guys to introduce us to more people too. You guys have connections, you guys can mobilize others. We want to make this team bigger, right? I want you guys to the takeaway is this. Do you guys want to be part of something big? Do you guys want to be part of something that changes the world? Because for these girls, their world has changed. And the world changes, right, when God uses people. The thing that affected me the most this year from bodybuilding, and this I really believe changed the world. One of my clients this year, Charles Kleindens, I actually met him at the show that Josh won. All right, when Josh first did his bodybuilding show. When they read my bio, right, and this is why everything is planned in life, right? My bio, I said I work with those with disabilities. Okay. After the show, Charles' mom came up to me. He's like, "Hey, I heard your bio. Can you come talk to my son? My son has a disability and he wants to compete and physically challenged. Right? Will you talk to him and encourage him in bodybuilding? All right." And then I walked up to Charles. I met him, and then I noticed right away. I was a bodybuilder. He had a big old chest, right? And I was like, "What the?" Right? And he's like, "Yeah, Dave, I'm thinking about doing bodybuilding," right? I looked at him like, you can do bodybuilding. You can do bodybuilding. All right? And at that moment, I committed to start working with him, and this year was his first year competing. Charles took second place at the Olympia this year. All right? And he was actually good enough to beat a lot of able-bodied people. Okay, he was shredded. He has a lung defect in both lungs, so he can't really do cardio because he has to be on oxygen. He's 4% body fat, right? He's 4%, and I'm like, how's that possible? You can't run, right? And I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me, okay? But he's disciplined. Because and I can tell you in Charles' life, he's so thankful that he has this, right? That he takes it seriously. Because he feels like this little gift opportunity he has, He's going to be faithful with it. When I at the Olympia this year, I didn't cry for my Hall of Fame speech. When Charles rose his hand for winning second place, okay, his entire lineup, even the guys who placed under him, they all raised their hands together. At the Olympia this year, for Charles and for all the physically challenged, right, it was a worldwide competition. And people worldwide saw what people with disabilities can do. That's how it changes the world. Okay? All I did was work with Charles. But Charles stood on a world stage, holding hands with other physically challenged athletes. And he showed the world. These are the best athletes in the world, right? These guys go back and they get, dude, the Korean teams are insane. The Americans don't appreciate us enough, okay? The Korean teams went back and they get like banners and stuff at the airport, okay? The Ugandan team, the people met up at the airport and carried him on their shoulders, like champion, right? It was like insane. The Argentinians, they went on like a daytime TV talk show, right? It was like ridiculous stuff. Wasim got in contact with the Jordanian royal family, all right? I know, it's ridiculous stuff. It's ridiculous.
It's a big deal, guys.
Yeah. So when Charles's story is on stage for everyone to see, it changes the world. Because these bodybuilders and these athletes and these, sports leagues, they're leaders in their community, okay? And if they go back to their communities and they say to their communities, no, people with disabilities, they can be more than what you think they are right now. That's how the world changes. And all it is bodybuilding. That's all it is. But the reason why God uses it is because we're faithful. In February, we have one weekend. All right, when it's one weekend, we're going to try the best we can, and we'll see what God does with it. In Budapest, we're going to have one weekend also, and we'll see what God does with it. For those in this room right now, right, for whatever your gift is, right, I hope you guys commit to this. Do what it takes. Do what it takes so that God will use your gift. Do what it takes. For me, the hard thing, the reason why I couldn't do well in bodybuilding, because I wouldn't do what it takes early on. All right, I told myself like to give God everything was just basically I'm gonna diet a little bit and do some cardio. That's what everyone else does. I discovered this about myself, and this is what you have to do by yourself. In order for me to fully realize my gift, and this is the hard part now, to fully realize my gift, I had to say I'm gonna do whatever it takes, right, to live out my calling, and that meant 4 hours of cardio a day. Okay, that was my sacrifice. I basically figured out, look, in order for me to fully live out my calling and to be faithful, this is the key, the challenge to you guys, to be faithful, I'm gonna hold nothing back. All right, and for bodybuilding, God didn't ask for my money. God didn't ask for a bunch of other things. He just said, will you grind and suffer for 4 hours a day, every single day? And I did. All right, and this is the best I've ever looked. I'm in Hall of Fame this year, so it worked out okay. But challenge to you guys is this. Do you ever pray this? I'll do whatever it takes. Do you ever pray that in your life? Do you ever pray, I will do whatever it takes to reverse 20 years of damage to an orphan girl I've never met before? I'll do whatever it takes to become a Christian serving other people that I've never met before. Because most of the time we hold back. And if you hold back, what I've learned in life is you're not going to succeed in your calling. You're not. We have to make a commitment, right? If you want to change the world, okay, in whatever sphere it is, and there's nothing too small. I try to show you this tonight, all right? There's nothing too small in life. Don't hold back. Let's pray. Father God, thank you for everyone in this room today. God, I believe that big things happen in small meetings. And so, Lord, I pray that you would just use every single one of us to live out our calling, to not look at any of our gifts as too small, as too weird, as too unusable by you. But God, I pray that we're all faithful here today to serve those who are most in need, those who are most underserved, those most unreached. That we be faithful, and Lord, we commit to you that we would do whatever it takes to see your glory, to see your love known throughout the world. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, my battery's low, good.
Did you tell them, what's his name? The guy, the wheelchair.
Oh, Mark?
Not Mark.
From Pakistan?
No. The guy, the Brian trains. Hunter. I told you about him.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell that
I don't
story.
know enough about him. Story.
Oh, you don't know his
Tell
story.
the story. You know?
Well, he's about his disabilities. He's on the wheelchair, and physically he's in most of the time he's in a lot of pain. But I just want to talk about like heart. You know, he has such a big heart, and when you look at him, it's crazy. I know I met his trainer, and he posted. Do you remember that video?
Yeah.
So with whatever energy he has and all of the pain he's in, he gets up the wheelchair and he holds like the dumbbell or whatever machine it is, and with all of his energy he screams and he works out. So this guy is just an example of, you know, as whatever pain, and he's on the wheelchair, he's on the toughest circumstances, but with a big heart you can do anything. And what was David saying about Charles, you know, he is, because also he has this disability, he's very secluded and he has his own world, you know, and people, you know, don't look at him as normal, you know. So for him, bodybuilding is everything, and competing even in one small show, it changes his whole life and his mother and everything. So it's a huge deal, you know, just like this girl who's an orphan, just like Charles. For all of them, it's crazy how one little, you know, help can change their lives and their families' lives.
You know, the thing that Charles said to me that affected me the most, and I never thought about it this way. After you guys did Team Challenge, okay? Team Challenge is team bodybuilding. It's team bodybuilding. So most bodybuilding is individual. Team Challenge, you can have a team from 2 to 5 people, right? So I coached Wasim, Charles, and another guy, Justin, who's a dancer choreographer, to do a routine together. And they won gold, all right? And their routine, you guys destroyed it, right? There's no routine even close that weekend. That was close to you guys.
That was good.
That was good. Charles came up to me afterwards, like, David, thanks for including me. I never thought about that. What we do in sports, we don't include people. Okay? We play basketball, there's basketball and there's wheelchair basketball. Alright? In running and there's disabled running. In bodybuilding, there's one category. Alright? There's team challenge, you can all do together. Alright? Even the guys who are physically challenged, one of the pros is actually an amputee. He competed in the regular pro bodybuilding. I never realized this, but that was the first time Charles ever competed in a sport with able-bodied people. Okay? He did physical challenge because he felt safe there, right? But being the team challenge put him outside his comfort zone, but it also included him. And for the first time in his life, he competed with regular able-bodied people. So when he said, David, thanks for including me, right? I've never thought about that before. That's how we change, right? That's why for me as a coach and a trainer, I'm not the same person anymore. Like honestly, like after one of my teammates, Mark, he has a wheelchair, after like a weekend with him at the Olympia, right, one day at Rio, I was like, dude, the world is terrible. Okay, there's like no ramps anywhere. I didn't even think about ramps in my life, right? But Ken and Mark on a wheelchair, I was like, the world is terrible. Like you guys are all discriminatory, okay? Like I was like, it's a good thing I'm buff, I'm just gonna carry him, okay? But if I wasn't buff, I would yell at all the management so hard, like for ramps and stuff like that. But that's one of the things I want you to see too, right? It's not just about us serving them, but honestly, when we serve them, we ourselves are changed too.
That's true.
Yeah. There's some things that I've never even seen before, like Paul Hemby, or one of the guys has cerebral palsy, and he can do leg press.
Oh, he was with the physically challenged.
Yeah, I'm like, I didn't know that was possible. How can you do leg press if you have cerebral palsy? Right? And he was doing like doing like 400 pounds of leg press, right? I was like, is that medically possible? Right? Like there's like just things I'm like learning all the time. I'm like, what? So, and the takeaway is y'all should exercise. Okay, we're concluded for the night. Everyone socialize. Tell Steve Weems how good of a job I'm doing. my annual report is coming out. Everyone tell them I'm doing a great job.
Eat food.
Yeah.
Don't. I'll take it home.
Yeah. Everyone do food. We have a lot of food, so. If you haven't seen our comic books and stuff, we have all this stuff for fun too. So, you can go get your kids. Go get your kids. I invited Dan because Dan's a therapist. I wanted him to hear if my therapy thesis is correct about personal narrative. I watched Kubo and Two Strings. You need to watch that still. Kubo and Two Strings. It's about personal narrative. Yeah.
Or Tony Robbins.
Or Tony.